There exists a moment in every Christian's life when fear knocks at the door louder than faith, when circumstances scream louder than God's promises. That was exactly what Billy Graham faced on one of the most tense nights of his ministerial career. Surrounded by threats, with his own safety at risk, he stepped up to the pulpit holding only a Bible opened to Psalm 27. What happened that night transformed not only that congregation, but revealed a secret that can revolutionize how you face every morning of your life. And that secret is kept in the final words of this message. How many times have you awakened with your heart already racing even before your feet touch the ground? How many mornings began with that tightness in your chest, that feeling that the day would be a lost battle before it even started? If you've lived this, know that you are not alone. This is the reality of millions of Christians around the world, people who love God but daily fight against waves of anxiety, fear, and uncertainty. Billy Graham deeply understood this human struggle. In one of his most powerful sermons on Psalm 27, he unveiled truths that can completely transform the way you begin each day. This isn't just another Bible study. It's a practical manual for spiritual warfare for the first moments of your day. In this study, we're going to dive into the revelations that Billy Graham shared about how Psalm 27 can become your daily declaration of victory. Why this psalm in particular? Because it contains the key to transforming mornings of terror into mornings of triumph. And if you're here seeking answers, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications, because we bring weekly deep studies based on Billy Graham's transformative messages, content that can revolutionize your Christian walk. Billy Graham preached on Psalm 27 at various moments throughout his ministry, but one of these occasions became particularly remarkable. It was the early 1960s, a period of intense social turbulence in the United States. Civil rights movements, racial tensions, the Cold War, and a young generation questioning traditional values created a climate of national uncertainty. It was in this context that Graham chose to address Psalm 27 in his evangelistic crusades. The evangelist recognized that people came to his meetings carrying deep fears: fear of the future, fear of nuclear war, fear of social changes, personal fear of failure and rejection. Graham knew he needed to offer more than vague hope. He needed to present a solid anchor for souls in storm. Psalm 27, written by King David in the midst of his own battles and persecutions, offered exactly that. Graham identified three central truths in this text that remain revolutionary to this day. First, that God is our light in the midst of the darkness of confusion. Second, that He is our salvation when we face impossible situations. And third, that He is our stronghold when we feel vulnerable and exposed. More than 60 years later, we live in an era of unprecedented anxiety. Social media amplifies our fears, 24-hour news feeds our worry, and the pressure for success and perfection suffocates our peace. Graham's words about Psalm 27 not only remain relevant, they have become urgently necessary. This is not a psalm to be read passively. It is a declaration of war against fear, a proclamation of faith that should echo in our hearts every morning. Billy Graham used to begin his reflections on Psalm 27 by asking a penetrating question. What do you wake up with in the morning? Light or darkness in your heart? This simple question touched the core of daily Christian experience. The evangelist understood that the first battle of each day happens the moment we open our eyes, when our mind is still organizing itself and our heart is vulnerable to first impressions. "The Lord is my light," declares David in the first verse. Graham explained that this was not a poetic statement, but a revolutionary theological declaration. Light, in biblical understanding, is not merely the absence of darkness. It is the active presence of God. When God said, "Let there be light" in Genesis, He didn't just remove darkness, He introduced His creative and ordering presence into chaos. For the modern Christian, this means that beginning the day declaring, "The Lord is my light," is not repeating a religious mantra. It is actively recognizing that God is present to bring order to the chaos of our thoughts, clarity to the confusion of our feelings, and direction to the decisions we will face. Graham frequently shared testimonies of people who transformed their mornings by applying this principle. An executive who suffered from panic attacks learned to begin each day declaring this truth even before checking emails or news. An unemployed family man discovered that proclaiming "The Lord is my light" before job searching completely changed his perspective and confidence in interviews.
But why specifically in the morning? Graham explained that the first hours of the day are like a blank canvas where the rest of the 24 hours will be painted. If we allow anxiety, negative news, or worries to be the first colors on that canvas, the entire day will be influenced by these somber tones. However, if we begin painting with God's light, even the challenges that arise will be seen through this illuminated perspective. The evangelist also addressed a practical question: how to do this genuinely, not just mechanically. He suggested 3 simple steps. First, before checking any electronic device, declare aloud, "The Lord is my light today." Second, specifically ask God to illuminate the decisions and relationships of the day. Third, thank Him in advance for the guidance He will provide. This practice is not about denying real problems or pretending that challenges don't exist. It's about establishing a solid foundation of faith before facing the realities of the day. Graham used to say, "We're not denying the storm, we're affirming that we have an anchor stronger than any storm." God's light also reveals truths that remained hidden in darkness. Problems that seemed enormous at night often prove smaller when exposed to divine light in the morning. Relationships that seemed lost gain new perspective. Financial situations that caused insomnia reveal possibilities not previously perceived. Billy Graham concluded this first point by reminding that Jesus identified himself as the light of the world in John 8:12. Therefore, when we declare "The Lord is my light," we're not just quoting David, we're affirming our union with Christ. We're saying that His presence, His wisdom, His peace, and His power are our reality before any external circumstance. The second part of David's declaration led Billy Graham to address one of the most universal questions of human experience: what to do when we face situations that are completely beyond our capacity to resolve. "The Lord is my salvation" is not a phrase for easy moments, it's an anchor for impossible storms. Graham frequently recalled his own experience during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. The world was on the brink of nuclear war, and he found himself preaching to crowds who lived with real fear that their cities could be destroyed at any moment. It was in this context that he deepened his understanding of what it means to declare God as our salvation. Salvation, the evangelist explained, has 3 temporal dimensions that transform our daily perspective. First, we were saved. Our eternal position with God is secure, regardless of present circumstances. Second, we are being saved. God is actively working in our current situations, even when we don't see immediate evidence. Third, we will be saved. Our future hope is guaranteed, giving meaning to present sufferings. But how does this apply practically to difficult mornings? Graham developed this concept by showing that beginning the day declaring "The Lord is my salvation" means recognizing that we are not helpless victims of circumstances. We are children of a God who specializes in impossibles. The evangelist used to tell the story of a single mother who lost her job during an economic recession. With 3 small children and no financial reserves, she awakened every morning with paralyzing terror. It was when she began applying this principle from Psalm 27, instead of beginning the day calculating debts and despairs, she began declaring, "The Lord is my salvation today. He has a way that I don't see yet." This practice didn't produce instant miracles, but it transformed her ability to think clearly, make wise decisions, and persevere with hope. In 6 months, she not only found a better job, but discovered talents and opportunities she would never have explored if not for the crisis that forced her to completely trust in God. Graham emphasized that declaring God as our salvation is an act of spiritual warfare. The enemy of our souls wants us to wake up defeated, to see only the problems and to forget God's power. When we declare "The Lord is my salvation" early in the morning, we're literally declaring that no situation is beyond divine reach. This declaration also transforms our prayer. Instead of praying with desperation, "God, if you don't do something, I'm lost," we pray with faith. "Lord, I know you have a way. Show me the next step." The difference in tone reveals a fundamental difference in faith. One recognizes God as a last resort, the other recognizes Him as the first resort. The evangelist also addressed situations where salvation doesn't come in the form we expect. Sometimes God saves us from the situation, other times He saves us through the situation, and in some cases He saves us by means of the situation, using it to shape and strengthen us in ways impossible otherwise.
Billy Graham concluded this second point by remembering that Jesus faced his most difficult morning in Gethsemane, declaring, "Not my will, but yours be done." Even the Son of God had to choose to trust in the Father's salvation when the situation seemed impossible. How much more do we need this same trust in our mornings of uncertainty? The third element of David's declaration led Billy Graham to the most practical and lasting aspect of Psalm 27. "The Lord is the stronghold of my life." While light brings clarity and salvation brings hope, stronghold builds endurance for the long journey of Christian faith. Graham observed that we live in a culture obsessed with quick fixes and instant results, but authentic Christian life requires endurance. Stronghold is not about never feeling weak. It's about having a safe place to run when weakness comes. It's about building an internal structure so solid that external storms cannot knock us down. The evangelist used the metaphor of a medieval fortress to explain this concept. A fortress was not built to avoid attacks, it was built to resist them. Its thick walls, its elevated position, its stored supplies, everything was designed to sustain a prolonged siege. Similarly, declaring "The Lord is the stronghold of my life" doesn't mean that problems won't come. It means we have a structure capable of resisting when they come. How to build this stronghold daily? Graham proposed 5 essential elements that should be reinforced each morning. First, the wall of the Word. Beginning the day reading and meditating on Scripture builds a barrier of truth against the lies that the world will bombard during the day. Second, the Tower of Prayer. Constant communication with God offers elevated perspective on situations. Third, the Arsenal of Promises. Memorizing and declaring biblical promises provides spiritual ammunition for specific battles. Fourth, the Supplies of Fellowship. Maintaining healthy relationships with other Christians ensures support during prolonged sieges. Fifth, the Guard of Gratitude. Cultivating a grateful heart protects against the poison of bitterness and discontent. Billy Graham frequently shared how he himself applied these principles. Even during his most intense crusades, with thousands of people depending on his ministry, he would wake up early to reinforce his spiritual stronghold. It wasn't religiosity, it was spiritual survival. He knew he couldn't give to others what he didn't possess in himself. The evangelist also addressed a difficult truth. Some battles are long. Some Christians face health challenges that last decades, family problems that extend for years, or financial struggles that seem to have no end. For these situations, a stronghold is not luxury, it's vital necessity. He told the story of a pastor who developed a degenerative disease at age 40. For 10 years, he awakened every morning knowing he was physically weaker than the day before. But also for 10 years, he awakened declaring, "The Lord is the stronghold of my life." His spiritual endurance not only sustained him, but became a powerful testimony that strengthened hundreds of other Christians in their own battles. Graham emphasized that spiritual stronghold is not about never crying, never doubting, or never feeling overwhelmed.
Even medieval fortresses had moments when guards were exhausted and supplies diminished, but the structure remained solid. Similarly, our stronghold in God doesn't depend on our momentary feelings, but on the solidity of divine character. The declaration, "The Lord is the stronghold of my life," also implies exclusivity. Graham warned against the temptation to have multiple strongholds, trusting in God, but also maintaining backup plans based on our own strength, influence, or resources. A divided stronghold is a weakened stronghold. True strength comes from concentrating our trust completely in the Lord. Let's return to that tense night I mentioned at the beginning, when Billy Graham stepped up to the pulpit surrounded by threats, holding only a Bible opened to Psalm 27. What made that night unforgettable was not the eloquence of his preaching or the sophistication of his theology. It was the devastating simplicity of his application. Graham looked at that tense congregation and asked a question that echoed through eternity. How will you wake up tomorrow? With the words of the newspaper echoing in your mind, or with the words of God vibrating in your heart? Then he challenged them to do something that would change their lives forever. For 30 days, before checking news, emails, or even talking to anyone, they should declare aloud, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid?" Not as a religious ritual, but as a declaration of war against fear.
6 months later, Graham received hundreds of letters from people whose lives had been revolutionized by this simple practice. Executives who overcame paralyzing anxiety, mothers who found peace in the midst of family chaos, students who discovered confidence to face academic challenges, elderly people who replaced worry with gratitude. The secret wasn't in the magic formula of the words, but in the transformative truth behind them. When you declare that God is your light, salvation, and stronghold before any other voice has a chance to speak, you are literally programming your heart for the entire day. This is not just another video to watch passively. It's an invitation to a revolution in your devotional life. If this message touched your heart, if you felt that God was speaking directly to you, don't let this moment pass. Subscribe to this channel, activate notifications, and commit to receiving weekly deep and transformative studies based on Billy Graham's messages. Comment below how you intend to apply Psalm 27 in your mornings. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that they don't have to wake up defeated. And remember, tomorrow morning, before the world speaks, let God have the first word. Because when the Lord is your light, salvation, and stronghold, the question is not what can go wrong, but rather what can God do through me today? Before closing this video, I want to ask a question that can change your life. Are you tired of waking up defeated? Tired of fear being the first voice you hear every morning? If the answer is yes, then this is not just a message you watched, it's a divine encounter that God orchestrated for this moment in your life. Don't let this opportunity slip away. Commit today. For the next 30 days, make Psalm 27:1 your first declaration of each morning. Subscribe to this channel to continue being strengthened weekly with deep studies of Billy Graham's messages. And in the comments, declare your faith. The Lord is my light and my salvation. I choose to live without fear. Share this video with someone specific who needs this word of hope. Because when we live in God's stronghold, we don't keep this strength just for ourselves. We multiply it in the lives of others. Your transformation begins tomorrow morning, and it begins with a choice: letting God speak first.